If you work in maritime logistics, you know the feeling. You're looking at a single piece of paper that is holding millions of dollars of cargo completely hostage.
Oh, I know it well.
It's the bill of lading,
Right.
a physical document that if it gets lost, delayed, or even forged,
Which happens?
it can stall a fully loaded ship and trigger millions in demurrage fees. It's insane.
It's the great paradox of global trade, isn't it? We have these incredible, fully automated, multi-billion-dollar container ports. You've got cranes guided by AI, vessels navigating by satellite.
State of the art.
And yet the entire administrative process that governs it all is stuck in the 19th century. The port's nervous system is still running on paper, on faxes, on these fragmented communication methods that just kill efficiency.
Absolutely. And that's our mission for this deep dive. We are going straight into that failure point. The massive bottleneck and, frankly, the unnecessary costs imposed by traditional paper documentation in global shipping.
Right.
We're going to explore how distributed ledger technology, blockchain, and more specifically smart contracts are shifting that entire paradigm. We're moving from slow manual trusting a signature
You can even read it.
to fast automated execution where you just trust the code.
And my role here, as always, is to keep this conversation firmly on the ground. This isn't about buzzwords or crypto hype for me.
Fair enough.
For the senior supply chain managers and the port directors listening, this is about one thing: operational efficiency, risk reduction, and tangible ROI. I need to see exactly how this tech removes that vulnerability and how it looks on the balance sheet.
You'll get your ROI, I promise. But before we get to the solution, let's just really unpack the immense, staggering scale of the problem.
Let's do it.
When most people think about admin work, they're picturing, what, a small stack of invoices?
Yeah, something manageable.
But the reality of cross-border shipping is, it's an almost absurd volume of documentation. We are talking about hundreds of unique documents for a single shipment.
The estimates are more than just shocking. They represent a fundamental economic drag on the entire system. A single container can generate over 200 different documents and communications.
200.
And these aren't just simple forms. You've got safety certificates, manifests, proof of insurance, phytosanitary requirements for produce, letters of credit, amendments to those letters. It's a mountain.
And just think about the complexity of the journey itself. You track a container of, say, high-value refrigerated goods, maybe flowers from East Africa going to Europe.
A very common route.
That cargo passes through the hands of roughly 30 different people or organizations. You've got exporters, customs brokers, freight forwarders, insurers, terminal operators, banks.
And every single one of them needs a piece of that 200-document pie before those goods can be legally released. Each handoff is a potential point of failure, a delay, an error.
And these processes, they're not just time-consuming, they are notoriously error-prone. A simple typo on a customs form.
Or the bill of lading just doesn't show up in time for the vessel's arrival. And the result is always the same: lost documents, security risks, and brutal delivery delays. And in our world, delay means demurrage fees and operational gridlock.
We have to put a number on this bureaucracy. Because if you're a port director listening right now, this is the number that should keep you up at night.
The sources are pretty unequivocal on this. The paperwork, the administration, all that associated friction, it accounts for up to half of the total cost of container transport.
Wait, say that again, half.
Half. 50 cents on every dollar you spend moving a container is eaten up by administrative friction.
That's unbelievable. How is that even possible?
Well, you have to understand where that 50% is going. It's not the cost of printer paper, right? It's the cost of labor. People spending hours reconciling documents that don't match up. It's the astronomical courier fees for flying a piece of paper across the ocean because it needs to get there faster than the ship. It's higher insurance premiums because the risk of fraud is so high. It's the cost of capital tied up while you wait for someone to verify something.
So if we could just target a fraction of that friction.
Exactly. If you can use technology to shave off even 10% of that 50% cost, the investment pays for itself almost immediately.
So the fundamental issue here is what the experts call a data trust problem. We're relying on these incredibly vulnerable physical documents like the bill of lading to bridge this gap between all these different systems that just don't talk to each other.
That's it.
The paper bolel, it serves three really critical functions. Can you just lay those out for us?
Absolutely. The bolel is the linchpin of trade. First, it establishes title to the goods. It's your proof of ownership.
Mm.
Second, it serves as a receipt of the cargo for shipment. And third, and this is crucial for the money side, it's a contract of carriage and the mechanism for payment and the eventual release of the cargo.
And because that document is a physical negotiable instrument, all of those functions are just wide open to fraud and inefficiency.
Massively.
The physical paper has to be flown across the globe. You need bank guarantees and letters of indemnity if it's late. Every manual step introduces delay, human error, and an opportunity for forgery.
And you've just hit on the risk factor. This fragmented data environment, this lack of transparency from a paper trail, it's a huge vulnerability from a risk management perspective.
How so?
Well, if all your data is siloed in different places, it's incredibly difficult to do effective compliance checks or sanction screenings in real time.
And what about counterfeits? I mean, that's a multi-billion-dollar problem.
It's the perfect environment for them. If you can't reliably trace a product's origin and track its entire chain of custody with an immutable record, you have zero certainty of authenticity. The counterfeiters can just insert their goods into the supply chain because the paper system makes verification after the fact almost impossible.
So the pressure on risk management is only going up. That cost of friction isn't just financial anymore. It's regulatory and it's legal.
It absolutely is.
Okay, so if paper is the antagonist in this story, the distributed ledger, or blockchain, is the hero's toolkit. It's time to dismantle it. But we need to move past the hype and define what this architecture actually delivers for logistics professionals.
Agreed. We need security, speed, and a shared, undeniable truth.
Exactly. So let's step back for a second and define this technology not by what it is cryptographically, but what it does for a supply chain executive.
Functionally, you can think of it as a decentralized, immutable database. It's a peer-to-peer ledger where data is shared and easily accessible by anyone who's authorized to see it.
And the safety of that data is guaranteed.
It is, because all the partners in the network have to cryptographically validate every transaction. And for what we're talking about, high-throughput logistics, this usually means a permissioned blockchain.
Right, something like Hyperledger Fabric, where only known vetted companies can participate.
Exactly. This is a crucial distinction. We're not talking about public, anonymous chains like Bitcoin. In a permission system, you know who every participant is.
So for our audience, the key takeaway isn't how the hashing algorithm works, but why it makes the data so reliable. The integrity is based on network consensus. Once a transaction is recorded as a block, it's linked to the previous one. To change one record.
You'd have to retroactively change every single block that came after it across every computer in the network all at the same time, which is practically impossible. The security is based on math, not a filing cabinet.
So that's what gives it superior information security, which translates directly to reduced risk and lower operational costs.
Okay, so let's focus on the payoff. What are the three pillars of value this technology provides to a chief supply chain officer?
The first pillar is provenance. This is the verifiable chain of custody. You can track a product from its raw material state all the way to the finished good.
And that's not just about authenticity. Increasingly, it's about proving compliance with ethical sourcing and sustainability rules.
Look at the pharmaceutical industry. They're using it to fight counterfeit drugs. Projects like MetaLedger give them real-time, tamper-proof verification of prescription medicines at the package level.
The cost of a drug recall or a counterfeit getting into the system it's astronomical. Provenance mitigates that existential risk.
The second pillar is auditability. Because every transaction is time-stamped and can't be changed, you have a permanent tamper-proof log.
So audits become simpler.
Radically simpler. It reduces what could be weeks or months of manual document reconciliation down to just a few moments of digital verification. Auditors, regulators, customers, everyone can see the same verified history.
And you see this in the luxury goods sector, right? To prove authenticity and fight the counterfeiters who thrive on opaque supply chains.
Exactly. And the third pillar, which is really the core of our conversation today, is smart contracts. This is the automation engine. It allows the terms of an agreement, like payment triggers, to execute automatically when predefined conditions are met.
But before we get to that, let's talk about speed. Because at the end of the day, speed of data processing is where you see the immediate ROI.
The contrast is just dramatic. Let's take that multi-party pharma pilot with KPMG, Merck, IBM, and Walmart.
Okay.
Their goal was to track prescription drugs. Previously, that process took up to 16 weeks of manual reconciliation.
16 weeks.
On the blockchain, that traceability was reduced to just 2 seconds.
From weeks to seconds. Let that sink in for a minute. That's not just an efficiency gain. That is the complete elimination of dozens of labor hours. It's an immediate reduction in inventory holding costs.
Or look at food safety. Walmart, using IBM's Food Trust, can trace the origin of produce like mangoes. What used to take them an average of 7 days a lifetime when people are getting sick now takes 2.2 seconds.
Right. This level of speed just fundamentally changes your operational risk profile. You're moving from these fragmented, error-prone data silos to a single shared ledger that gives you instantaneous, actionable truth.
And the smart contract is the engine that drives that action. Like we said, these are self-executing agreements on a blockchain that automatically enforce terms and conditions. And the critical phrase is,
Without intermediaries.
exactly, we're moving from a static paper promise to a dynamic, self-executing set of coded instructions.
Okay, but before we celebrate the automation, we have to talk about the fallout. If these agreements execute without intermediaries, you are actively talking about removing the value of roles that have been central to trade for centuries.
Like who?
Brokers, agents, certain clerical functions in banks, even commercial lawyers who specialize in dispute resolution. Their entire job is to be that trusted middleman.
And that reduction in friction, that removal of the middleman, directly translates into lower transaction costs. It lets companies redesign these incredibly complex business structures. The need for a broker to manually check a document or a bank to hold funds in escrow, it just disappears.
The key then is dispute minimization, right? If the contract itself is automatically calculating billing, demurrage fees, final payments, and it's all based on verified data that both parties agreed to at the start.
Then it represents a fair and trustful procedure. The calculation is transparent and based on immutable data, so disputes become less likely. You don't need the courts or lawyers, which prevents even more payment delays.
But an automated contract is only as good as its trigger. How does this digital agreement know what's happening in the real world? It needs to know when the cargo arrives or what its condition is.
That brings us to the critical link, the Internet of Things, or IoT.
And this is where my skepticism kicks in again. The integrity of this whole system hinges entirely on the quality of that data input. It's the garbage in, garbage out problem, but amplified.
What do you mean?
If the sensor data going into your immutable blockchain is compromised, say a corrupt port employee tampers with a weight sensor, or a temperature tracker is faulty, haven't you just permanently recorded a lie? Where's the human override?
That's a huge challenge, and it's all about system design. The cargo flow becomes trackable through robust, secured IoT devices. We're talking about sealed container trackers, GPS data, sensors monitoring temperature, humidity, weight.
And all that data gets uploaded directly onto the blockchain.
Correct. It gets uploaded in real time. And that information is processed by specialized mechanisms called oracles, which fetch and verify this external real-world data and feed it to the smart contract.
So the contract reads the validated input, something like GPS confirms container 123 arrived at port X at 14:00 hours.
Exactly. And that input triggers the next coded instruction. It could be releasing the digital bill of lading, initiating a payment, or auto-generating a new contract amendment. The whole auditing process is managed by the smart contract itself.
Okay, and this automation has huge implications for the financial side of trade. Specifically, that massive trade finance gap.
Let's spend a minute on this because it's so relevant for the banks and financing institutions. Something like 80% of all global trade is financed by credit.
But the trade finance gap, the difference between requests for financing and what's actually provided, is growing. It's estimated to be around $2.5 trillion right now.
And a major reason for that is a lack of trust from the financiers. They get poorly presented applications or fragmented, unreliable documentation of the collateral.
The opacity of the paper system breeds risk for them. They often have no idea about the true value, condition, or even the current location of the assets they're financing until weeks after the fact.
Blockchain solves this directly. By digitizing the key assets on the blockchain, the digital bill of lading, the insurance policy, the purchase order financiers get real-time access to accurate, validated information.
This completely changes collateral management for banks. It gives them instant assurance that they're financing legal goods and that the payment cycle will complete faster and more predictably.
And that visibility leads directly to better financial liquidity for the banks themselves. They get instant visibility of all the main events impacting their financing.
Which reduces the time needed for trapped liquidity. That's capital that's just sitting idle while banks wait for some paper to be verified.
Exactly. It allows them to redeploy that capital far more effectively. And you're seeing platforms like WeTrade doing exactly this, digitizing and securing documentation to make the whole global trade lifecycle work smoother and cheaper for everyone.
So this is no longer just a proof of concept.
Not at all. We are seeing massive operational enterprise-level adoption, and it's all driven by collaborations that are directly targeting that primary point of friction, the bill of lading. The market value of blockchain and logistics alone is projected to jump from about $7 billion in 2022 to over $94 billion by 2027.
That growth has to be fueled by real ROI.
It is. And let's start with the dominant force in this space, TradeLens.
The Maersk and IBM partnership, that's the big one. It's built on Hyperledger Fabric, and Maersk, which handles a colossal portion of global container traffic, realized that this problem was just too big for a proprietary solution. It had to be an ecosystem play.
Their goal is pretty clear: enable convenient, secure information sharing and promote transparent global trade. The beauty of TradeLens is that it provides a single, unified, real-time view of all the key transactions for every authorized participant.
Shippers, port operators, customs, banks, everyone sees the same thing at the same time.
Right. And it integrates that real-time IoT and sensor data container, temperature, location, weight, all validated by the blockchain.
The strategic question for executives then becomes a competitive dilemma. Do you join a platform like this and get the network benefits, or do you risk being isolated as the ecosystem consolidates around a shared ledger?
And it raises big questions about governance, too. A lot of ports and shippers are wary of platforms initiated by an industry giant who's also their direct competitor.
That's a valid concern, but the momentum is there. The Valencia Port Foundation, for example, partnered with IBM to integrate blockchain directly into their port logistics to get that secure data exchange.
Okay, but let's get even more specific. Let's talk about the applications designed specifically to kill the ball.
The ball killers.
Exactly. Take an application called Wave. It was financed by Barclays Accelerator, and its stated goal is to eradicate the physical bill of lading. It's a blockchain app that directly connects the manufacturer and the purchaser on a decentralized ledger.
And then you have CargoX, the Slovenian startup. They let users issue and transfer electronic bills of lading, or EBLs, on a public blockchain network. Functionally and legally, they're identical to the paper bowl, but they're instantaneous.
All right, now let's tie this directly back to the money. You, the realist, demand quantifiable ROI. Can using one of these EBL platforms actually cut costs in a meaningful way?
The evidence is pretty solid. Let's look at Q, the BBQ, a UK-based manufacturer. They used CargoX's EBLs for importing wood products from South Africa.
And the result?
Their measurable result was that they cut administration costs by between $100 and $200 per container.
Okay, so where did this savings come from specifically?
Well, by getting rid of the paper, they cut the costs of express courier services, which can be hundreds of dollars per shipment for a critical document like a bowl. They also saved on bank processing fees for letters of indemnity, which you need when the physical paper is late. And they drastically cut the internal labor hours spent on manual processing.
So it's a powerful combination. Less cost and less friction, which also sped up their transportation times.
It's about operational resilience, not just speed. And this isn't confined to a single document. Look at the Renault Group. They moved their entire supply chain documentation process onto a blockchain.
For what purpose?
Real-time compliance checks and secure document sharing across their whole automotive ecosystem. It minimizes delays during high-volume assembly. BMW did something similar with their part chain initiative to trace high-value components.
So we're seeing this across industries.
All over. VeChain is optimizing logistics. Home Depot's using it to enhance supplier visibility and reduce invoice disputes. The fact that major players in automotive, retail, pharma, and food are all moving their critical documents onto shared ledgers, it tells you this technology has passed the credibility threshold.
This whole digital shift fundamentally re-engineers the nature of trust in global trade. And it brings us to a really fascinating academic and philosophical debate that executives have to understand when they're picking a governance model.
The trust paradox.
Exactly. When we adopt an automated system, who or what are we ultimately placing our trust in?
What's really interesting here is the split in academic thought on this. Both views agree that clarity and security are hugely enhanced, but they disagree on the role of pre-existing human relationships.
So let's unpack the first view, which is the most radical one. This is this trustless trusted scheme, or TTS. Proponents of this view argue that blockchain basically eliminates the need for interorganizational trust. Parties no longer have to trust each other's honesty or competence. They just have to trust the authenticated, cryptographically secured data on the ledger.
So in that model, the blockchain itself becomes the impartial, trusted third party. It's the objective witness and executor. Trust is shifted away from people and centralized toward the operating system itself.
If the system says the container arrived, the payment executes. You trust the code, not the agent.
But the second view, which often resonates more with people who manage long-term partnerships, is the interorganizational trust reinforcement model, or ITR.
And what does that say?
This view asserts that blockchain doesn't eliminate trust at all. Instead, it helps to initiate and reinforce existing trust between partners by making everything more clear and accountable. The research suggests it facilitates swift trust building between partners who've never worked together before.
The implication for an executive is huge then. If you subscribe to the ITR view, your focus is on how this tech supports your good relationships.
But if you go with the TTS view, your focus shifts entirely to rigorously auditing the code and the data streams, because the system itself is the final arbiter, regardless of your relationship with your partner.
But regardless of which philosophy wins out, the operational reality is that trust in the system itself is high, and that's because of its inherent capacities.
The superior information security, the speed, the self-executing governance from smart contracts, all of it contributes to users putting a significantly higher level of trust in the blockchain compared to an opaque manual system.
And when you break down the types of trust, the system dramatically enhances two critical types: cognition-based trust and institution-based trust.
Because the evidence is permanent, verifiable, and validated by the entire network. You trust the process because it's transparent and resistant to manipulation by any single party.
So in practice, we're strategically shifting our focus from auditing the intent or behavior of our partners to auditing the integrity of the data stream itself, the code, the sensors, and the network rules.
But that requires long-term caution. Users are giving a higher level of trust to the blockchain, but that means the technology has to maintain those high standards of performance and security forever. If a major vulnerability is found, that system-associated trust could evaporate overnight.
Okay, we've established the massive promise, but now we have to address the single biggest hurdle for senior management: the reality of implementation.
The hard part.
When you look at the technology adoption lifecycle, where is blockchain for logistics right now? It's definitely past the peak of the hype cycle.
It's moving into the crucial phase where the real work happens. It's shifting from being a niche innovation to strategic localization. The preference right now is still to start with low complexity.
Meaning single-use application.
Exactly. Start by replacing the BOL or automating one invoicing process. Those have a much higher success rate. You develop the more complex multi-partner extensions later.
A radical innovation like this might eventually replace all the old legacy systems, but large-scale implementation requires two things: a ton of computing power, and, critically, a long transition phase.
And that transition is expensive and complex. You're running these hybrid IT systems where your old databases and your new blockchain apps have to run in parallel until the switch is complete.
So this is where the non-negotiable requirements come in. Blockchain is not a plug-and-play solution you can just install.
Not at all. It demands fundamental changes to how an entire ecosystem of competing partners functions.
First on that list has to be shared governance.
It has to be. It must be established across the entire ecosystem: shippers, ports, customs, banks, carriers. Governance defines the rules. Who can write data? Who can read data? Who votes on changes to the smart contract protocols?
Second, you absolutely need standardized data models.
Yes, between all trading partners. The very problem we're trying to fix is systems that don't communicate. If your suppliers all use different formats for a certificate of origin, the shared ledger is worthless.
Third, tight integration with your existing core systems. The ledger is useless in a vacuum. It has to connect seamlessly with your ERP, your PLM, and your SCM systems.
Otherwise, you've just created another expensive data silo.
And finally, the most human hurdle: change management.
This requires a significant investment in training and stakeholder buy-in. We're asking people who have worked in logistics for decades to fundamentally change how they do business. SMEs, the small and medium enterprises, they have to be supported so the benefits aren't just confined to the giants.
But above all of that, the single most critical operational requirement is data integrity.
Absolutely. The entire credibility of the system, whether you're tracking a pharma cold chain or using it for advanced things like automated carbon credit issuance, it all hinges on the integrity and security of the data you feed it.
That's the real vulnerability. Any manipulation of that data, a tampered sensor, a compromised transmission channel, it completely undermines the entire system.
It leads to a profound loss of that system-associated trust we just talked about. For ports looking to use smart contracts to track COO emissions for green initiatives, that data has to be bulletproof from the moment it's captured.
Which means executives have to invest heavily in robust data integrity mechanisms. That's tamper-proof sensor networks, encrypted data transmission, and rigorous, regular smart contract audits to find any code vulnerabilities. The benefits of transparency are only realized if the foundation is unassailable.
Well said.
And with that, we've concluded our deep dive. We've journeyed from the paperwork nightmare where fragmented data costs global logistics up to half of the shipping price to the promise of the automated shared ledger. Blockchain is facilitating unparalleled transparency, security, and efficiency through massive systems like TradeLens and focused apps like Jane.
We saw that smart contracts, fueled by secured, real-time IoT data, are actively eliminating our reliance on vulnerable paper. They're drastically cutting transaction costs by automating things like the bill of lading. Companies like Q the BBQ are cutting admin costs by hundreds of dollars per container, proving the ROI is real right now.
The journey requires overcoming complex integration hurdles, shared governance, standardized data, ensuring data integrity. But the transformation to a digital, secure, and trust-efficient supply chain is not just possible, it's accelerating. That market value is expected to soar past $94 billion by 2027.
And if the immediate efficiency gains and security benefits haven't convinced you that this is a competitive necessity, then consider the impending regulatory landscape. Governments are rapidly tightening requirements for traceability, not just for quality, but for ESG compliance, sustainable sourcing verification, and granular KOO tracking, like the initiatives pioneered by Mercedes-Benz. Trustworthy, real-time digital data is quickly becoming not just an efficiency booster, but a non-negotiable compliance requirement for global trade resilience. The bill of lading is just the first piece of paper to disappear. The verifiable, immutable record is the new price of entry.